Knowledge that I'm talking about from my personal experience as an African daughter, an African woman, as a mother, as a mother who has a daughter who is in her 20s, and as a sister. I have a passion, having gone through life as a teenager to this age. I heard this notion of teenage pregnancy, and each time I hear it, I heard it with a negative connotation to it. So I started thinking, because I had a daughter and she was coming up, and of course I started bringing her up like I brought up my own. They brought me up. Then I had to stop at some point in time and figure out whether my upbringing of the emphasis on no pregnancy, no sex, and all of this no's, was it African? Was it something that was going in line with nature, or was it a man-made requirement that don't coincide with nature? Then I started evaluating. The first evaluation that I put before was to consider nature. I realized that nature made it where at 13 a girl starts menstruating, which is a prerequisite for getting pregnant. I also noticed that at that 13 onward, she starts being attracted to men. So then I started saying to myself, if nature makes this so, is it appropriate then that society puts law to stifle that natural process? And then the thing that also beats me was that I started asking myself, why is a woman made? What is the primary role of a woman? That is not the role of a man. It became clear to me that the role of a woman is to procreate, to give, to add to the society. It's not the man's job to do that. Then being that I majored in biology in school, I started taking my science knowledge to understand a little bit more about the nature of a woman's body, and realize that the woman's body is different from the man's body in that when a woman is born, her eggs are present from the day she's born. So if a woman lives to be 20, her eggs are 20 years old. Meanwhile, a man discharges his sperms daily depending on what he does to do that. So his sperm is being renewed. What that means to me then is that if a woman wants to have children that are going to be healthy, they need to start early. Because again, using science, it's been shown that the eggs, the longer, the older they stay, they can come down with other kinds of diseases like autistic children, Down syndrome children. The women can develop fibroids in their womb, and that will stop them from having kids. So the whole thought process started running through my mind. If these things are true, that as women go older, they come down with these things, and then why is it then that we are encouraging that women stay longer to have children? I realized that there's something called religion that came into the scene. That was one thing that I identified as an enemy to women performing their duties at any age. When I identify religion as one aspect, I also identify capitalism, the concept of being able to earn, be educated enough to earn money enough to then be able to take care of the children. Then I went back to look at our African culture, how it was before. I realized that it was not phrases from our African culture encourages childbearing. It says the child belongs to the village. It says it is a blessing to have a child. It says It doesn't. I realize that our culture doesn't frown at children, the birth of children. That only came in with the introduction of the European concept of religion and sin and all these things. So I then decided that I'm going to make this a quest of mine to see to it that our governments start recognizing that the role of a woman as a child bearer is ordained, and the nature that made us has determined the time frame from which you can do that, and that it is not the place of any establishment or any value system in the cultures to stifle nature. And so then I started saying that then how is it then that we're going to be able to accommodate a situation where a young girl gets pregnant? I started realizing that that's when the government and the society that they are in needs to come into place. What do I mean by that? If a girl gets pregnant, it's not a crime. That's the first thing. And it's not a sin. That's the second thing. And the third thing is that if she's doing a service to the society, then the society is responsible to see to it that that childbearing, having that child doesn't become a stress point for her. Just like they can make hospitals and subsidize hospitals, my opinion became that if a girl gets pregnant and she can keep going to school, they should have schools that accommodate them and they don't feel like they've done something wrong. And no girl gets pregnant without a man involved in it. So that double standard of penalizing the girl, making the girl even more ignorant by pulling her out of school, shaming her, all these things affect the baby in her womb. Because science has shown that when a woman is in distress, the baby is in distress. So the reason I decided that this is my first presentation on this topic. The reason I decided that I bring it to the spotlight is because there are no rules that are made without a man, that is just the women that made the rules. If the women made the rules, the women will make the rules to favor them because they're the ones going through this ordeal. If the rules are made where I am feeling as a woman now that it's not favoring us, then I'm going to be saying that the men have something to do with it. And the reason why I'm presenting this in a group where we have men and women is that even though the whole world doesn't sit here, but we represent different cultures and different customs from wherever we've come from. And that this should start being a food of thought in our heads, whereby we start considering whether is it a wrong thing for women to be able to start having children at the age of 13. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a medical doctor. She said her mother has 10 children. She's an Igbo lady. She said her mother had 10 children and her mother was married at the age of 13. At the age of 13, she started being nurtured and instructed and brought to where she understood gradually these things. Now, somebody can be saying that if you married at the age of 13, or you have children at the age of 13, I'm not talking about marriage and having children. To me are two different things. I'm not saying that you must be married to have children. That's not what I'm even saying too. I'm just saying that having children should be a thing in itself that is honored, regardless of whether you're married or not. When it happens, it should be the society's responsibility to see to it that the child and the mother have the necessary things to stay on track. Because we know that ignorant mothers raise ignorant children, which then populate ignorant nations. So to pull a daughter out of school because she became pregnant is an ignorance on the part of the country, the village or whatever that they are in. And I told the story of hysteria last time where I gathered from the European culture that there was a period of time there where the women they were being diagnosed in the hospital by doctors with a condition called hysteria because for lack No, hysterectomy is a practice of removing this as a means to solve the hysteria. You see? So this hysteria was coming because of lack of love, lack of sex, lack of those things. And so I said to myself, if stifling that process can result into a disease that has been diagnosed as hysteria, which even they went as far as taking the uterus out as a means to solve that problem, instead of allowing the natural nature of the woman to take its place. If she feels like having sex, if it comes down where she has a baby, so be it. Instead of allowing that process, we frown at this, and this is the process. This frowning and shaming generates a disease like hysteria. It generates practices like abortion. It generates the feeling of inadequacy in a woman. So my presentation today is to emphasize that even if this message is strange in the ears of the men and women who are seated here today, that they take this into consideration and start looking at the implications of restriction of or frowning of the sexuality as we know it, which results in pregnancy in women. I think we should have a different attitude. I'm advocating, as I am planning to open a school someday, that would be a school where it can have a daycare there, it can have a woman's needs as she moves from a girl to being a woman. I'm not advocating no education. I think they can go side by side. To be supportive instead of judgmental. They need to recognize that the girl who has become pregnant becomes more mature than the ones that are roaming around still wanting to be pampered by their parents. If we want a society of mature people going forward, that's the way to go. If you ask me if I am encouraging that, I can say yes, because I don't want to have Down syndrome children around. I don't want to have autistic children. You can say that there should be control if you think that somebody is having way too many children than they can take care of. That is an educational process that can be taught to anybody to understand. And it's not the job of the woman alone, the men too. Okay? No woman gets pregnant by herself. So to put this burden all on the woman sounds silly to me. I again say having a child is not a problem for a woman. Not having a child is a problem for a woman. A woman has developed a psychological problem in a society when she doesn't have a child, because society values and rates that woman by that action. So we confuse the woman. 1 minute we're saying that don't have, the next minute she's supposed to switch. No. Society needs to adjust. Your children grow up to meet you at an age where you can transmit what you've learned to them appropriately and still have life. If you're a Jewish person, at 13 they have a thing called bar mitzvah. In African tradition, at 13 they have, different tribes have their, how do they call it? Their, what's the term, valid? Where they move you from childhood into adulthood. It happens around that 13. It's not for nothing that your period comes around that time. Our ancestors are not stupid to have had that to be the times that they do that. Western influence with the Christian and Islamic or whatever, all those religions, they are all together. Their religion has come and put a guilt trip on the whole issue. The woman determines who, even in some of the cultures that we come from right now, that is how it is. A woman can look at this man and say, this man is very intelligent, he's very feisty. I'm going to have a baby with this man. Because why? I need that gene pool in the society. So she will have with this man. Then the other guy comes around, he's intelligent in another way. And then she look at her and said, I will have another child with this man. That was a role given to a woman, not a man. It is the woman who was supposed to be making those choices. But with the coming of Christianity, where if you read the Bible, it talks about things that put down a woman. It says a woman is made from the rib of a man. How is that possible? All these things are European concepts to put down the woman instead of using the woman as a partner side by side. With all these things input, the African ignorantly and stupidly goes along with all these practices and alter their own society, and they are always playing a catch-up game. We are in a catch-up game. Our societies didn't operate the way they're operating today. And because we are catching up with the Europeans, they have gone ahead of the game. They know how to maneuver it, and we remain at an impoverished level whereby we look at pregnancy and all these things as a problem instead of putting the institutions in place or the system inside our own societies in place to welcome and respect children and women who give birth to them, no matter the age, as a blessing. After the first one, she will adjust her ways, if she has ways to be adjusted. Okay? If she thinks that I just want to be me a mother now, the man I had a child with, I'm going to go on with it, and whatever that is, she will adjust it according to the difficulties that she will face. When you have a child, you wake up in the night, anytime that child wants you to do it, it trains you. You want a second one, you do twice as much. So I'm just saying, while she gets her lessons through the process, it is not the job of the society to stifle her, accuse her, ridicule her, threaten her with God's wrath. None of that. That's the opinion I'm going to hold from now forward. And I'm going to show the government what they need to do by my example.
Thank you.